Hello guys, welcome back. And today, we're going to be talking about Eugene Melnyk and him ranting about the Maple Leafs defense, the Ottawa mayor, and the Ottawa Senators fans. Now, Eugene Melnyk went on the radio to discuss the Ottawa Senators, and it was not pretty. So what did he actually say, and what does it actually mean? Watch till the end to find out. Eugene Melnyk joined the CRFA 580 radio station, I'm pretty sure in Ottawa, on Friday to discuss the Ottawa Senators, and he did the one thing that he should never do. He talked, and he talked a lot. Now we're going to first go over the Ottawa Senators and Eugene Melnyk saying and criticizing the Ottawa Senators fans, and this one is probably the tamest one, I would say, out of the three topics here, and it's saying something because this was still pretty bad. Now, Eugene Melnyk said this: the key for us is to, first of all, identify who's a Senators fan and who's not. And that statement is very, very funny because what he's basically saying there is that basically fans that don't go to the games aren't real fans, and that is basically untrue completely. Now, the Ottawa Senators aren't the biggest franchise in the world. They don't have the most fans in the NHL by any means, but they still do have a decent fan base, or at least they used to until Eugene Melnyk kind of became Eugene Melnyk. But before that, they still had a decent fan base, and they had quite a bit of fantastic fans. And now, being one of the worst placed teams in attendance this year, Eugene Melnyk has to blame it on somebody, and now he's coming out and blaming it on the Ottawa Senators fans for not showing up to a last place team that is absolutely garbage. Now, I don't know a lot of Ottawa Senators fans, but a lot of the Ottawa Senators fans that I do know don't go to Ottawa Senators games because of Eugene Melnyk. Maybe not even because of how bad the team is, but squarely because of Eugene Melnyk. And of course, they came up with the hashtag Melnyk out, kind of like Garth Snow in New York, how they petitioned to get him out of there. They're doing the same thing with Melnyk, but obviously it's not to the same extent. Melnyk being the owner, Garth Snow was the GM in New York, but the same thing goes. I know a ton of people that will not support Eugene Melnyk and the Ottawa Senators just because of that, and it makes sense because of how much a garbage fire that franchise is right now. And Eugene Melnyk is putting up this super unrealistic expectations that any fan will want to go out and support the last place Ottawa Senators team that pretty much only has Tkachuk right now, Shabbat being injured, I still think. And at that point, you're just putting yourself up for failure. Why would you call out the fans for not supporting your absolutely horrendous team? It just doesn't make sense to me. Hold yourself accountable for once, man. Melnyk has not done that over the last few months. He hasn't done that when he's made obvious mistakes time and time again. The one thing he hasn't done is put the blame on himself, and that's something that I don't think he will learn at this point. He's still an old man. He has done this time and time again, and blaming it on the fans for icing a terrible team is the worst approach to take it, and he's obviously seeing the blame already. And I know if I was an Ottawa Senators fan, I would by no means be going to Ottawa Senators games this year. While Tkachuk is a solid player, I'm not going to spend money to actually see just one player on the team. I would actually want to see maybe, I don't know, a decent product on the ice. I think that's a good idea there. I would like to see the team maybe be competitive and not absolutely be the worst team in the league by a large margin. You know, that would make me go to games. That would make me have interest in the team. But no, we got to trade guys like Mark Stone, Matt Duchene, and have no reason for fans to come at all. That's the approach they took, and now they're finally seeing the consequences. It's almost like completely tanking and going on a rebuild and trading guys like Carlson, fan favorites like Turris and Stone. It's almost like the fans don't want to support that kind of model. I'm shocked too. I wouldn't have noticed that. I would never have expected that. To be last place in the league, to trade all your greatest players and say, oh, fans, come to the game. Obviously, nobody is going to show up to the games, and putting yourself up to this expectation that fans will come in and that the real fans will be there is just such a mistake, and a mistake in a long line of mistakes of Eugene Melnyk. Now, if that quote didn't anger you, this next one definitely will. Now, Eugene Melnyk went out and criticized the Maple Leafs defense, saying they're going to have a tough time winning the Stanley Cup without defense. Because they're hitting the cap, they can't bring anybody new in, so they're stuck. And that's where you gotta be extremely careful. They collapsed their team, say we gotta do a rebuild, but you know, mistakes were made and somebody forgot about defense. And oh my gosh, This quote is just gold on so many different levels, and it's just baffling how bad it really is. Now, I'm a Maple Leafs fan. They're my fourth favorite team. I watch them quite a bit. I'm not going to defend their defense. It's not good on paper. But when your highest paid defenseman, and when you're the owner of the Ottawa Senators, whose highest paid defenseman is Cody Ceci, you don't exactly have too much of an argument. I mean, yeah, of course, Toronto's defense is not that great, especially with Dermott and Gardner out. That's pretty much a fact. But when your defense is that bad, when you got guys like Wolanin out there, Jaros, people that nobody has even heard of before, when you're icing those type of players, even in a rebuild, you can't go out and say that, oh, the Toronto Maple Leafs have such bad defense, because when you compare the two, there's no comparison. I mean, the Maple Leafs don't have a great defense, but the Maple Leafs are up here, and the Ottawa Senators might be all the way down here. And yes, while Chabot is a fantastic defenseman, Brandstrom will be a fantastic defenseman. When it comes to the Ottawa Senators defense, you can't say another team forgot defense when you look at the team and they have almost no defense at all to be found. They were one of the best offensive teams in the league, but their defense was so cripplingly bad behind Chabot that it was just kind of just scary how bad it was. And with the Ottawa Senators, again, they're not supposed to be that team. It would be fine if Melnyk just shut his yap and didn't say anything. Of course, the Ottawa Senators are not that great of a defensive team, but now Eugene Melnyk is saying that Toronto forgot defense while he hasn't even looked in the mirror himself and looked at the actual Ottawa Senators roster. And for a team that traded Erik Karlsson just last year, you'd think they'd be a little bit more aware on their current situation and say, oh, this team is not forgetting about defense, maybe we did. But trading one of the best NHL defensemen in NHL history and saying that another team forgot about defense is really bold. And Eugene Melnyk, I don't think is going for bold, I think he's going for brash. But when it comes to these statements, again, forgetting about defense is kind of ironic, isn't it? I mean, with Eugene Melnyk, it's kind of like he traded Mark Buffett, traded the best defenseman in the world. You know, it's kind of funny in the end, isn't it? Now, for the final piece of Melnyk news today, finally, I thought it would take forever. He went out and criticized the mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson. He was one of the main guys that pretty much prevented that LeBronson Flats idea and plan from going through. Melnyk went out and criticized him, and while this isn't as bad as I would say the Leafs defense quote, it is still very bad. Now, Eugene Melnyk said this about Jim Watson. He is so lucky that I keep my mouth shut. He should keep his. I have a lot to say, but I don't say it. But you know what? I'd be very careful if I was him and walking around mouthing off. With him opening up like that, you know all he does is the NHL offices. They look at it and say, hey, do we really want to bring more events to this city? And Eugene Melnyk is kind of right in a way. But that complete start, the start of that whole statement is just completely bogus. When he says that he is lucky that he keeps his mouth shut, I mean, is Eugene Melnyk even listening to himself right now? I mean, come on. Eugene Melnyk is the owner that shuts his mouth the least. You see him almost every single month saying something different about his team or the fans or the ownership or whatever it might be. He is always saying something. And he's telling the Ottawa mayor to keep his mouth shut after he is being lucky to keep his mouth shut. It just doesn't make any sense. And Eugene Melnyk saying this is the best thing out of all of this. It would be one thing for, I don't know, the Vancouver Canucks president to come out and say, oh, the mayor of Vancouver should keep his mouth shut. But when it's Eugene Melnyk, of all people, the person that has kept his mouth shut the least throughout pretty much the last 5 years, to go out and say that, oh, he's lucky I keep my mouth shut. It's just so stupid, so dumb on so many ways. And the Ottawa Senators are just baffling, especially with Eugene Melnyk, in a way that we all thought it would just be the peak of badness. The peak of just toxicity a year ago when they traded guys like Erik Karlsson and all that stuff. Beginning of the season with the bot accounts and the Uber incident. We all thought that would be the low point for the Ottawa Senators, but it somehow gets worse. It somehow continues to get worse and worse, and it continues to baffle me in a sense that Eugene Melnyk has continued to not keep his mouth shut, has continued to keep yapping about this team in the worst way possible. And to me, I'm just kind of surprised that nobody has said no to him, because at this point, there's almost nothing stopping him if he's going to continue like this. At this point, Eugene Melnyk has said so much crap over the last couple of years that it's almost like nobody is saying no to him in that franchise. And that is a scary, scary precedent for that team to set. If there's nobody saying no to Eugene Melnyk, then that team is going to be in deep trouble, and it already has been. It seems like nobody is willing to step up and negotiate here with Eugene Melnyk. It's always like Eugene Melnyk is the leader of that room. And when the owner is the leader of everything in the franchise, that usually spells bad for that entire franchise. And we've seen that happen in the past with teams like Edmonton right now. We're seeing that happen. But Ottawa is on a whole other scale. And with Eugene Melnyk right now, there has been some owners in the past that have said a lot of crap. But Eugene Melnyk is just the crown king of that right now. And he continues to do it. He hasn't even stopped for basically 3 years now. And to say, I would be very careful if I was him. He is so lucky I keep my mouth shut. For Eugene freaking Melnyk to say that. That is the most ironic and funny thing I have seen all day. It's the worst thing for Ottawa Senators fans because they have an owner that is obviously not being stopped at all. And with Eugene Melnyk, I'm just scared for the Ottawa Senators because I just don't think they're ever going to get out of this hole if Eugene Melnyk keeps being allowed to make the decisions that he has been. And saying stuff like this almost every single month is helping the Ottawa Senators in no sense. And when it comes to this Ottawa Senators rebuild, I just don't see it working out whatsoever. There might be a couple of years where it looks good for them, but then I think it'll come crashing down because of Eugene Melnyk and the decision that he makes ultimately. And that's the big thing that I'm worried about, is that the despair for the Ottawa Senators, I just don't really see ending. Especially if Eugene Melnyk continues to be allowed to make all the decisions, to continue to be the owner and the reign supreme decision maker over everything. If that continues to happen, I don't think the Ottawa Senators will ever change, and I don't think they'll ever win a cup in Ottawa. And if Eugene Melnyk continues to be there and make all the decisions he does, it'll be a bad period for the Ottawa Senators on top of a bad period already. But obviously, for Eugene Melnyk, he's already made a lot of bad decisions. He can't reverse that all in one day. But a big thing to do is to stop talking. Stop going on the radio. Stop going and talking to reporters and all this stuff. Just stop doing it. It is not smart. It is obviously not helping the Ottawa Senators. And the first big movement for them should be to stop talking about the situation. Stop giving opinions on other teams, on the mayor, whatever it might be. Have Eugene Melnyk stop saying stuff, and ultimately, that'll make the Ottawa Senators instantly a much better franchise. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below. So let me know, what do you think about Eugene Melnyk and his recent comments? What do you think about him attacking the Maple Leafs defense? What do you think about him going after the Ottawa Senators fans? And let me know also, what do you think about him going after the mayor of Ottawa and his obviously ironic comments? But if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you can click on this card right here to watch my video with the Ottawa Senators rebuild and why it will never work. But that is what for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on the Eugene Melnyk comments and his irony, and I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.
Thank you.